I'll be home as soon as I can. It's Kyla's 7th birthday, after all. Happy birthday, my little princess.
My granddaughter, Kyla, blushed a bit, yet she had a proud expression on her face.
Daddy, have a great day at work.
My son, Mike, left for work with his usual energy, but he never came back. He was in an accident, rushed to the hospital, and passed away soon after. Then, exactly 1 year after those tearful days, I found myself facing an unbelievable situation, one that filled me with terror.
Mom, sorry for the wait. I'm home.
It was undeniably Mike's voice. As soon as I realized it was him, I let out a shocked cry, feeling like my heart would leap out of my chest. Mike, how are you here? Are you a ghost? My son, who had passed away a year ago, was standing at the front door, soaking wet. My heart was still pounding in my chest from the shock. Then that shock quickly turned into anger, and I exploded. I grabbed Mike with so much force that I almost hit him. Then Mike took my hand and said seriously,
It's finally over. Finally.
Mike began to tell me everything that had happened. My name is Laura. My husband passed away a few years ago, and my only son, Mike, has become independent. Now in my 60s, I live alone, working part-time and enjoying my freedom. My son, Mike, works for a major construction company. He's in his 30s now, married to Sarah, who's also in her 30s, and they have a daughter. The highlight of my life these days is when Sarah comes over with my granddaughter, Kyla. You could say I'm working part-time just to spoil my granddaughter. One day, while on my way to work, I tripped and fell, and ended up needing crutches to get around. Living on crutches was quite a challenge, and seeing me struggle, Mike and his family would visit me often, worried about how I was doing. On weekends, they'd drop by, always checking on my health and how my leg was healing.
Mom, it must be tough to do chores with your leg like that, right?
If it's okay with you, would you like to live with us until your leg heals?
Oh no, I'd be such a burden. Hearing our conversation, Kyla smiled and said,
I want Grandma to stay with us.
So I ended up moving in with my son and his family until I recovered. Since we didn't originally plan to live together, I was quite mindful of Sarah, but she welcomed me with open arms, and I was really grateful. As I went about my days, I couldn't help but think Mike had married a wonderful woman. However, not long after we started living together, I noticed Mike sighing more often. Maybe our sudden living arrangement was harder on him than he let on. After all, I was his mom, but to Sarah, I was her mother-in-law. I wondered if Sarah was finding it tough living with me and had said something to Mike. Even though we got along well, living with someone who isn't family by blood can be a burden, especially for a daughter-in-law. Mike, do you think Sarah really doesn't like living with me?
Why would you think that? Sarah was happy when we decided to have you live with us. In fact, it was her idea.
Then why do you keep sighing when you come home? Mike laughed at my question.
Mom, there's nothing for you to worry about. I'm fine. I'm just gonna take a quick shower.
As I watched him get up and walk away, Sarah gently spoke to me.
I'm sorry, Laura. I didn't mean to worry you.
Sarah, you heard us talking. She sat beside me and let out a small sigh.
Mike hasn't been doing well at work lately. He hasn't been sleeping much, and I'm really worried.
She looked down, clearly upset. If he says he's fine, and with you by his side, I'm sure things will be okay. I gently held Sarah's hand.
You're right. Now that you're here too, Laura, I can't let myself get down.
I smiled warmly at Sarah as she made a playful flex of her muscles. A few weeks passed after that. One morning, I woke up to find Mike getting ready for work, just like usual. Good morning. Are you leaving already?
Yeah, I want to get back early today, so I'm heading out a bit sooner to finish up my work.
Daddy, are you coming home early today?
Kyla asked while eating breakfast as Sarah tied her hair.
I'll try to get back as early as I can. It's your 7th birthday, after all. Happy birthday, my little princess.
Kyla blushed a little, looking both shy and proud at the same time.
All right, I'm off.
Take care.
Sarah and Kyla saw him off at the door, while I sat in a dining chair, watching Mike leave. It was the same scene as always. But everything changed in an instant. That afternoon, we got a call from Mike.
Mike, what's going on?
I've got an unexpected business trip. I'm really sorry, but I won't be able to make it home tonight.
Oh no. It's Kyla's birthday today.
Please apologize to her for me.
With that, he hung up. Sarah's face looked tense after the call. And no wonder. Her husband wouldn't be coming home for their only daughter's birthday. Why on earth does he have to go on a business trip today?
Well, it's work, so we have to accept it. Let's make Kyla's favorite food and cheer her up,
She said with her usual bright smile, and started cooking. Honestly, a 7th birthday is such an important day. It's not something that happens every day.
Well, we can still celebrate, even if it's a bit late.
She continued cooking Kyla's favorite dishes. When Kyla got home from school and heard that Mike wouldn't be coming back due to work, she looked disappointed. But thanks to Sarah's skillful way of cheering her up, Kyla soon perked up, and we had a little birthday party. It was a small, simple celebration with just the 3 of us, but when Kyla's favorite chocolate cake appeared, her mood lifted, and we managed to get some great photos. I sent one of the photos to Mike with a message, but there was no reply. The next morning, Sarah suddenly started getting ready to go out and said to me,
Laura, I have something to take care of at my parents' place, so I need to head out. Could you watch Kyla for me?
What? Did something happen at your parents'? I replied, surprised, but Sarah just looked down with a troubled expression.
Anyway, I've already made breakfast, so please have that for dinner as well. Thank you.
With that, she hurried out the door. Kyla must have overheard Sarah's plans because she quietly had breakfast with me before getting ready for school. Kyla, despite being only 7, was a very mature child. Even in moments like these, she wasn't much trouble.
I wonder what happened with Mom. She left in such a hurry.
Yeah, I guess something urgent came up.
Well, it's okay. I've got Grandma with me. I'm off to school now.
After seeing Kyla off, already on her own, I sat down on the couch. thinking about what was going on. I couldn't reach Mike, and Sarah had suddenly left for her parents' house without much explanation. With a growing sense of unease, I stayed with Kyla, looking after the house. Sarah didn't come back for 2 days, and I could sense something was wrong. Then the news came, completely out of the blue.
Mike was killed in a tragic car accident.
The shocking words came from Sarah when she finally returned home 2 days later. "What are you talking about, Sarah? That's not funny."
I'm not joking, Laura. I didn't want to tell you this either.
Then Sarah explained what had happened in the 2 days she'd been gone. 2 days ago, she got a call from the hospital. Mike had been in an accident and was rushed there. In shock, she went to the hospital alone. As his final wish, Mike had asked that his mother, me, not be told about the accident. Sarah handled everything alone: the cremation, the funeral, even the burial. I wanted to see him one last time. How could this happen?
I'm truly sorry. But this was Mike's wish.
When are you going to tell Kyla? Even a child can sense when something is wrong. Sarah thought for a moment, her gaze downcast.
I think we should keep it from her for a while. She'd be devastated.
Yes, maybe we should wait until we've calmed down ourselves. Sarah and I agreed to wait until we were ready before telling Kyla about Mike. We decided to say that Mike was on a long-term assignment and couldn't come home often.
It's kind of sad he left without saying goodbye.
Kyla pouted, and Sarah reassured her with a smile.
It's okay, sweetie. Daddy misses you too. Next time you see him, give him the biggest smile.
Their brave, tender exchange made my heart ache. I hadn't seen Mike's final moments, hadn't even seen his remains, so it still didn't feel real. Like Sarah said, it was as if Mike was just away on a long work trip. Then, about a month later, the president of Mike's company personally came to express his condolences. He was a large man, tall and imposing. As I served him coffee, I sat down behind him. The president turned to face us, formally introducing himself before speaking about Mike. "Thank you for coming all this way, sir."
Please, raise your head. I deeply regret what happened. Mike was such a hard-working young man, with so much ahead of him. However,
Yes.
I hate to bring this up, but I don't recall giving any orders for this business trip.
Wasn't it an assignment from the company? With a growing sense of unease, I looked at the president's face. He stared back at me with a puzzled expression.
No, actually, Mike had requested vacation time for a family trip. Everyone at the office thought that's where he was. Did he mention anything to you?
The intensity of his gaze unsettled me, but I continued the conversation. No, he didn't tell me anything. Why would he lie? I asked, confused. The president shook his head.
I have no idea. This whole situation is truly unfortunate.
He said that and then left. I kept thinking about the president's words. I had no clue what had been bothering Mike in the days before his death. I had wanted to keep everything Mike used, but Sarah had already disposed of his phone and computer, leaving me with no way to understand what might have been on his mind. It felt strange to me, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. Maybe Sarah couldn't accept his death and didn't want to be reminded of him. Then, strange things started happening. Ever since the president's visit, I noticed a suspicious black sedan parked near the house more and more frequently.
That black car was at the park again today,
Kyla said during dinner one evening. Apparently, she'd also seen it when she left for school in the mornings. That's weird. It's a strange car. Kyla, don't go near it or talk to anyone if they call out to you, okay?
I know. My friends and I have already talked about it. That car's always there.
Just don't walk around alone, okay?
Sarah's face was tense as she gave the warning. Around the same time, Sarah's behavior began to change too.
Mommy, guess what happened at school today?
I'm eating, Kyla. Let me eat in peace, okay?
Sarah, that's not a nice way to talk to her.
Laura, I'm disciplining her. Please don't interfere.
Kyla shrank into silence at Sarah's words. Ever since Mike's death, Sarah had grown distant and cold, both toward Kyla and me. No matter how hard Kyla tried to talk to her, Sarah would say she was too tired or start doing something else without listening. She treated me the same way. Whenever I brought up her behavior toward Kyla, she would sharply dismiss me, saying it was all part of her discipline.
Why don't you just stop? If you can't even pour yourself some water, then don't drink it.
I'm sorry.
Even small mistakes Kyla made would result in Sarah yelling at her. And when she called it discipline, I couldn't say much. Sarah, you're being way too harsh. You're not helping Kyla that way.
That's not true. If I don't correct her now, she'll have a harder time later.
Even when I stepped in during the worst of it, things didn't seem to get better. While I was out one day, an incident occurred. Sarah didn't feed Kyla and actually locked her outside the house, leaving her crying in hunger. On top of that, a social worker at Child Protective Services came by. Apparently, they received a report saying a child was crying and screaming outside, possibly being abused. Sarah, this is too much. What did Kyla do to deserve this?
She left food on her plate. I told her if she wasn't going to finish it, she didn't need to eat. Then she started crying about being hungry, and it was getting on my nerves.
Sarah sighed as she said this. I was shocked beyond words. Sarah, what's happening to you?
Nothing's happening. I'm fine.
Sarah replied firmly. It felt like she had become a completely different person. Maybe she had been putting on an act in front of Mike, trying to be the perfect wife. Now that Mike was gone, it seemed like her true self was coming out. If I hadn't gotten injured, this living arrangement wouldn't have happened in the first place. I was at a loss, wondering what I should have done. I wondered if ending our cohabitation would be the right solution, but I didn't feel right leaving Kyla alone with Sarah.
Do you think Mommy will come home tonight?
Maybe. She might come back after you've gone to bed again. Despite the cruel treatment, Kyla still longed for her mother. Since the visit from Child Protective Services, Sarah had practically stopped coming home. I had no idea where she was going or what she was doing, and when I asked, she wouldn't tell me anything. Even when she did return, it would be late at night, and she would leave again almost immediately, clearly avoiding Kyla and me. One evening during dinner, Kyla quietly asked,
Grandma, do you think Mommy will come to the Parents' Day at school tomorrow?
"If Mommy can't make it, Grandma will go for you, okay?" As I said this while preparing dinner, Kyla gave a sad smile. She was probably hoping her mother would be there. It wasn't the same having her grandmother go instead. I understood that, but with Sarah not coming home, I had no choice but to fill in. By that time, I no longer needed crutches. My leg had healed significantly, and I had started going back to my part-time job while taking care of Kyla. A few weeks later, I received a letter from Sarah saying she had filed a notice of termination of affiliation by marriage. It was a formal way of stating that she had chosen posthumous divorce. There was nothing else written in the letter, just that one sentence. After reading it, I resolved myself. With Mike gone and Sarah leaving, I decided to take full responsibility for raising Kyla. From that point on, I devoted myself to caring for her. At first, Kyla acted as if everything was fine, but then she started having nightmares, and her behavior at school became unstable. She even became hesitant to go to school, so I started taking her there and picking her up, joining other, much younger parents at school events. At first, Kyla seemed a little awkward, but gradually she got used to the new environment, and her smiles became more frequent. Before I knew it, a year had passed, and Kyla was turning 8. It was just the two of us celebrating her birthday again, and as always, I bought her favorite chocolate cake, and we celebrated with great joy. This year, unlike last, we took pictures together, just the two of us. I had also decided that it was time to tell her about Mike's death, something I had kept hidden until now. After cutting the birthday cake, and while we were both eating, I started to speak. "Kyla, happy birthday, sweetheart."
Thank you.
Kyla smiled at me with a cheerful face, her cheeks covered in chocolate cake, as she eagerly took another bite. "Sweetie, there's something Grandma needs to talk to you about. You've grown up so much, and I think it's time to tell you." Just as I was about to continue, the doorbell rang. Before I could answer it, I heard the front door open. Had Sarah come back? "I'll go check. You keep enjoying your cake, okay?" I told Kyla and headed to the front door, feeling a surge of frustration. If it was Sarah, I had a lot to say to her. I approached the door, trying to keep my anger in check, only to find a figure, soaking wet, standing there.
Sorry to keep you waiting. I'm home.
The voice was unmistakably Mike's. The shock of hearing it made my heart leap out of my chest. "Mike, how is this possible? Are you a ghost?" Mike looked down at his feet and made a joke.
I'm not floating around.
"This isn't funny." Overwhelmed, I shouted at him. My heart was still pounding. But the shock quickly turned to anger, and I found myself lashing out. I almost grabbed him with the intent to hit him. But Mike caught my hand and, with a serious face, said,
It's finally over.
He began to explain everything that had happened over the past year. 1 year ago, After returning to the office from a sales trip, Mike accidentally overheard a secret conversation between the company president and a high-ranking government official. The president had been bribing the official with a large sum of money in exchange for information on the bidding process for a new soccer stadium. While Mike was eavesdropping, he was caught by the president's experienced secretary. Mike tried to act as though he hadn't heard anything, but the president beckoned him over. As Mike tried to leave, the secretary grabbed him by the shoulder and led him to the president. With an unusually pleased expression, the president handed Mike a bundle of cash.
You understand, don't you?
However, Mike has always had a strong sense of justice since he was a child.
I can't accept this.
Mike pushed the stack of bills back and turned to face the president without responding. The president, sitting heavily on the couch, didn't seem angry at Mike's defiant attitude. Instead, he leaned in and whispered in his ear,
You've got a little girl in elementary school, don't you?
That single sentence triggered a realization in Mike. The president had always been surrounded by dark rumors. Now that Kyla had been mentioned, Mike felt a chilling fear. The sense of unease I had felt when I met the president wasn't unfounded. Mike was torn. He didn't want to be part of this corruption. But he couldn't risk putting his family in danger either. That inner conflict is what had caused his frequent sighs when he came home. I had wrongly assumed that Mike was stressed over our living situation and Sarah's feelings, which had made me feel somewhat relieved. But if that was the case, why did Sarah leave after Mike was gone? I think I'm starting to understand, but why did Sarah disappear? Before I could finish my sentence, the front door opened.
It's been a while.
It was Sarah, standing at the entrance. Sarah, where have you been? I couldn't help but shout in shock.
I had told Sarah about everything from the start.
That's not the point. Why did you leave Kyla behind like that? I grabbed Sarah by the arm, unable to hold back my anger. How she had treated Kyla. How she had disappeared, leaving Kyla behind. All of it overwhelmed me, and I was ready to burst. I had spent the past year watching Kyla, struggling to fill the void left by her parents, and my emotions were boiling over. Sarah, looking regretful, began to speak.
Laura, do you remember when the president came to our house?
Yes, that was not long after Mike passed, wasn't it? It had been around 1 month after the accident that the president personally visited our home. At the time, I thought he came to pay his respects, but now I realized he was really there to confirm if Mike had truly died. According to Sarah, the president had grown suspicious of Mike's death and had his connections in the underworld monitor our home constantly. The black sedan Kyla kept seeing.
Yes, I was worried Kyla might be in danger.
Sarah had sensed the threat and distanced herself from us to draw the enemy's attention to her instead. She admitted that she might have gone too far in her behavior, but explained that it was all to protect us.
I'm the one who called Child Protective Services.
Sarah had made the call to Child Services herself, using it as a diversion to mislead those who were watching us. She had gone to such lengths to try to protect Kyla and me. With Sarah's disappearance, the black sedan stopped appearing around our house. "Why didn't you tell me anything? I thought Sarah was just tired of living with me and taking it out on Kyla, that she left because of that."
We were looking for a way to solve everything.
While Sarah was deceiving us all, Mike, who was supposed to be dead, had been hiding out at a cabin that had been passed down to him from Sarah's late father. The cabin was deep in the mountains, far from any populated areas, making it a perfect hiding spot. Mike had been in contact with the few allies he had left within the company, waiting for the right moment to expose the president.
I finally found the right timing.
Mike had uncovered undeniable evidence of bribery between the president and a government official. He sent it to the police, prosecutors, the media, and even posted it on social media. But just when he thought it was all over, the enemy made a final move. Desperate, they sent men from the underworld to the cabin to eliminate him. Sensing this, Mike escaped through the back of the cabin, swam across a river, and managed to get away from his pursuers.
It was a pretty thrilling experience, though. I even live-streamed the whole thing on my phone while I was running from them.
Mike held up his old smartphone, laughing as he told the story. I was completely dumbfounded at how he could talk about such a dangerous situation so lightly. Apparently, one of the viewers of the live stream had called the police, and soon after, Mike heard the sound of sirens.
Grandma, what's going on? Daddy?
Kyla peered, noticing that I hadn't returned, and her face lit up with joy.
Daddy. Mommy. You're both home.
She ran toward Mike, ready to hug him.
I'm home, Kyla.
With a loving smile, Mike, still soaking wet, was about to pick her up, when Sarah and I quickly intervened. "Take a shower first."
You'll get Kyla all wet.
Realizing this, Mike nodded and started to take off his shoes.
You're right. I was so caught up in everything, I totally forgot.
Seeing Mike standing in front of me, alive, brought a flood of emotions. The son I thought I had lost was right here. Tears started streaming down my face. Without thinking, I threw my arms around him. "Welcome home." I hugged him tighter than I ever had before. In the days that followed, the bribery scandal involving the construction company president and the government official dominated the news.
Is that Daddy's case?
Kyla was glued to Mike, clinging to him on the couch as they watched TV together.
Yeah, looks like it.
Mike replied lazily, making me laugh. It turned out that the president and the official had been friends since college. The official had gotten into deep debt due to illegal gambling, and the president saw an opportunity, sparking their corrupt relationship. It was a perfect example that just because someone offers a helping hand when you're in trouble, it doesn't mean they're a good person. The colleague within the company who had been secretly helping Mike gather information was actually the president's longtime secretary. 6 months earlier, the secretary had become a grandfather, and that's when everything changed for him. Looking at his grandchild, he thought,
I can face my grandchild if I keep turning a blind eye to wrongdoing.
as someone who had also experienced the power of a grandchild's love, I could understand that feeling. Once the corruption was exposed, Both the president and the government official quickly confessed to their crimes. With Mike and Sarah back home, my rule of taking care of Kyla was officially over. Don't ever leave again.
I won't, I promise.
I'm really sorry for leaving you alone, Kyla.
They hugged her tightly once again. My leg had fully healed by this time, and I was back to my part-time job. Still, the thought of returning to an empty house and living alone again made me feel a bit lonely. Even though it was under difficult circumstances, living with Kyla for the past year had filled the house with warmth and energy. I also realized how nice it felt to take care of someone again after so long. Then my son and daughter-in-law made an unexpected suggestion.
Why don't you keep living with us?
Laura, I've never once thought living with you was a burden. It's been so much fun, and you've been such a great support. I know you probably thought I was uncomfortable, but that wasn't the case at all.
I didn't know how to respond to their kind words. But before I could, Kyla chimed in.
Grandma, please stay with us.
There was no way I could refuse my granddaughter's heartfelt request. And so, we decided to live together again. Sarah returned to being her kind and cheerful self, just like before. Kyla continued to grow into a bright and happy child. And now, with Mike back, I was once again surrounded by the happiness of our family.